Okay, I'm going to go over Steven Avery's affidavit from November 23rd, 2016, because there's some discrepancies in it. Alright, on paragraph number 11, it says, "Sometimes I use the star 67 features when I made calls from my cell phone. When I called Miss Halbach at 2:24 p.m. before she arrived, and 2:35 p.m. on October 31st, 2005 after she left, I dialed star 67 so that if Miss Halbach did not answer, she would not see my number and feel like she had to return my call. I called at 2:24 p.m. to see when she would get there, but she didn't answer the call." Okay, the next paragraph in number 12 says, "Miss Halbach got to our property around 2:31 p.m. When I looked out of the window of my trailer, I saw her taking a picture of my sister's van. I put on my shoes to go outside and pay her. I saw her start to walk toward my trailer when I was going outside, but when she saw me, she waved and turned around and walked to her car. I went over to her car, and I remember she was sitting in the driver's seat with the door open and the engine was running. I went over and handed her $40 in cash for the ad. She gave me an Auto Trader magazine and drove away. I remember she turned left on Highway 147 from Avery Road." Okay, this is not what Steven Avery told the police at all. In any of his interviews, he never, this is not what he says. He says that he walks out and he pays Teresa, he gives Teresa the money and the ad at the van. And then they walk over to Teresa's vehicle and she gets in and hands him the book. And this statement says that she was already in the vehicle when he got down there, and he gave her the money and the ad while, she was already in the vehicle. So, was he lying to the police, or did he think that this sounded better after he was already in prison and wanting to get out, or did the attorney, Kathleen Zellner, somehow influence this statement? Because this is not what he told police during any of the police interviews, and you can listen to all three of them, and he says the same for all three. He pays her by the van, and then they walk over to her vehicle. She gets in, the driver's side door is open, she reaches over to the passenger side, gets the Auto Trader, and gives Steven. But in this, she's already in the car when he gets there. Okay, and he uses the star 67 when he calls her at 2:24 and at 2:35. So the call that he makes at 4:35, he does not use star 67. So what made the 2:24 call and the 2:35 call, special to where he wanted to use star 67? So let's go on down to paragraph 14. Says, "I looked at the Auto Trader magazine that Miss Halbach gave me and saw that they had front loaders for sale. I called at 2:35 p.m. to see if she could come back to take a picture of a front loader I wanted to sell in Auto Trader magazine. I hung up before Miss Halbach picked up the phone." Okay, the 2:35 phone call is on Steven's cell phone records, but it's not on Teresa's, and the reason is because he hung up before the messenger service picked up or Teresa answered. So that's why it's not on her phone record. But this is also contradicts what he told the police. He told the police that she was there between 2 and 2:30, and that after she gave him the Auto Trader book, he walks into his house, puts the Auto Trader book beside the computer, then walks back outside to go to Bobby's, but then he sees Bobby's blazer is not home. So then that's where he also says that he sees Teresa signaling a left turn to turn left off of Avery Road. So we all know from the phone call from Auto Trader to Teresa at 2:27, the call duration was 4 minutes and 45 seconds. So if you do the math, that puts Teresa could not have been there no earlier than 2:32. So even in one of Kathleen Zellner's documents that she had posted not long ago, she actually has Teresa leaving the Avery property at around 2:38. So later on down here, he says that he calls at 2:35 to see if she could come back and take a picture of a front loader that he wanted to sell on Auto Trader. So if Kathleen Zellner has Teresa leaving at 2:38, why would Steven call at 2:35 to see if she could come back to take a picture if she was still there? So the earliest that Teresa could have been there is 2:32. So that would have gave her 3 minutes, and that's if she got there at 2:32. That's the earliest. We don't know exactly what time she got there. So that would have gave 3 minutes to do all the stuff that he needed to do, or that she needed to do, and be gone by the time that he called back at 2:35 to see if she could come back. Okay. Okay, now I'm going to go on down to paragraph number 16. It says, I had a bonfire on October 31st, 2005, which was the same day Teresa was there. The fire started around 7 p.m. The fire burned for about 2 or 2.5 hours. I invited my nephew Brendan to come over. Brendan went home before Jody called at 8:57. The fire burned quickly because we were burning brush. I used gas to start the fire. By the time Jody called at 8:57, the fire was almost over. So also, Steven never mentions anything about having the bonfire to the police in any of the interviews, and he also doesn't mention Brendan being over in any of the interviews. And he does mention, they asked him the last time that he had burned anything in the burn pit, and he says that he burnt brush a week before. He thinks it was a week before Teresa was there, and he said he also threw some tires in the fire too. So this, he's actually saying, that he did have the fire on October 31st, the bonfire, and Brendan was over, but when he's talking to the police, he says he never burned anything the day that Teresa was there. He, on the next one, I'm going to go down to, this is paragraph 17, I'm going to skip down to about halfway. He says, I had burned garbage a week before Halloween and did not have enough trash on Halloween to warrant burning garbage. When I burned garbage a week before Halloween, Robert Fabian, my brother Earl's brother-in-law, had come over to shoot rabbits with Earl. They drove up to my trailer in my mother's golf cart and we made small talk. I know that Robert Fabian testified that this event took place on Halloween, but I know that it took place a week before because I did not burn any garbage in the burn barrel north of my house on Halloween. Okay, that's what Steven's affidavit says from November 23rd, 2016. However, on the November 9th police interview, at the 33-minute and 40-second mark, Steven himself says that Earl and Bob Fabian on October 31st came to his house around 5 o'clock in his mother's golf cart to shoot rabbits. So in this affidavit, he's acting like, Robert Fabian testified that it took place on Halloween, but Robert Fabian was either lying or he was mistaken about it. But here it is, November 9th interview, Steven Avery himself, out of his own mouth, says he says that Earl and Bob Fabian came over on October 31st around 5 o'clock in his mother's golf cart. So what is going on here? You know, I mean, is Steven just, did everything he tell the police was just a lie? Or, you know, what's the big deal about everything? Also, Steven mentions to the police that he called Teresa after Teresa left. Steven says that he called Teresa after his mom came up with Steven's mail. And he said it was a little bit after Teresa left. His mom comes up and brings Steven's mail and stays 5 or 10 minutes, and then a little bit after that, that's when Steven says he calls Teresa about the front end loader. And it doesn't make any sense. If he's wanting Teresa to come back and take a picture of a front end loader while she just has left, I mean, she couldn't have been, if she had left at and he calls it 2:35, she couldn't have been no further than at the end of the driveway. Why would he not want her to know that it was him calling if he's wanting her to come back and take a picture? I mean, that's her job. It's a business. So why would he hide his number to not want her to call him back? I mean, that doesn't make any sense to me. The only way it makes sense to me is if he was he didn't want Teresa to know that he didn't want Teresa to call him back, because he didn't want any trace of a timeline for anybody to go by. Because the star 67, I don't think Steven realized that it would still show up on the phone records, because there's no way that she would have had time to leave, because she wouldn't have got there before 2:32, so she couldn't have left it at he says he calls her back at 2:35, so she wasn't even there maybe a minute and a half or 2 minutes at the most. And he uses star 67 because he says that he didn't want her to see his number and feel like she had to return his call. It's a business call. It's not like he's wanting to borrow money or something. It's a business call. He's wanting her to come back and take a picture of the front end loader. But there's also no mention of his mom in here bringing up his mail. That was a big thing that he always told the police, that his mom came up 5 or 10 minutes after Teresa left to bring his mail. Here's a list of stuff that you really, if you believe that Steven is 100% innocent without a shadow of a doubt, here's some things that you pretty much have to overlook and just pretend doesn't exist. Okay. One thing is, Steven, when he calls Auto Trader, even though he is going to be the person of contact, Steven does not leave his name or number as a contact. He just leaves Barb. He leaves Barb's number there. So if Steven, and he calls him twice and he doesn't leave his number either time. So Steven knows that he's the one that's going to be paying and dealing with Teresa, but he doesn't leave his number. And he knows that there's a very good chance, you know, that who's going to be, Bobby may be home, but even Steven says, you know, sometimes Bobby's sleeping and sometimes he may be awake. So why would he not leave his number? Another thing is, out of all the times that Teresa has come to take pictures for Steven, Steven says that this is the first time that he doesn't return to work after she leaves. Another thing is, he conveniently requests no receipts after the October 10th. When Teresa comes up on October 10th, he requests that he doesn't want any more receipts. Okay. Steven denies burning anything on October 31st. And he also never mentions that Brendan came over on October 31st during the police interviews. Okay, he uses two star 67 calls, 224 and 235, but he does not use it at 435. It says Teresa, in one of the, I think it's the November 6th interview, he says that Teresa may have come to his door when she first started coming to take pictures for Steven. And later on in the interview, they ask him when was the last time that Teresa came to take pictures, or came to his door, and he says it was on October 10th when she came to take pictures of his Grand Prix, which that was the last time that Teresa came to the Savage, or to Steven's house to take pictures, was on October 10th. So he goes from saying that she came to his door, that she may have came to his door when she first started coming, to, she came the last time she was there on October 10th. She came to his door. And then they also talk about on October 10th, and Steven says that he called Teresa and Teresa called him back. So there's proof there that Steven didn't use star 67 then when he called Teresa, because how would you have called him back? And he talks about several times, calling Teresa and all this, and she would call him, if she was going to be late. So what made the October 31st, what made those two calls special to where he would have to use, he used star 67? I mean, like I said, this is a business. It's not, it's not a drug dealer or it's a business. He's wanting to contact her, So why would he not want her to contact him back? It makes no sense. Also, he says that, I think it's in the November 6th interview, he says that he went over to Bobby's after he got home from work sometime around noon. And then he sort of, he gets crossed up in this, it's at the 24-minute and 50-second mark on the November 6th. They ask him, I think the question was, they ask him how did he know Bobby was home? And then he says he went over there. And then he gets real mixed up about it. And another thing you have to dismiss is Steven was wrong about the time Teresa arrived. I mean, Steven was very adamant during all of the interviews that Teresa was there between 2 and 2:30. That nothing happened after 2:30. That everything was done and she was gone by 2:30. And he even says in the November 9th interview that it could have been around 5 after, 10 after, or a quarter after 2. But it was definitely not past 2:30. Everything was done by 2:30. So that's basically all that I have. But if you noticed, none of this that I've mentioned is part of the physical evidence. So to me, you don't even have to have, or I don't have to have the physical evidence to at least think, that there's a very good possibility that Steven could be guilty. So I don't see how somebody could listen to his interviews, read the affidavit, look at the phone records, the cell phone records between his cell phone records and Teresa's cell phone records, and think that without a doubt that he's 100% innocent when there's too many discrepancies. I mean, a lot of people say that Steven's the only one that kept his story straight during the whole thing, but two of the main things that he kept repeating was the time she was there, which was between 2 and 2:30, and he never burned anything on the day she was there, and they're both wrong. So, I mean, what does it matter if you keep your story straight if the information you're given is not correct? But that's all I have right now. So, I mean, I'm just looking for proof to say that I'm wrong, because I'm not doing it. All I'm doing is listening to his police interviews. So maybe he's lying completely about everything he says during the police interviews, because at least 50 to 60% of the stuff that he says doesn't match up. I mean, it doesn't make it can't be right. But anyway, prove me wrong.